Good. It's been a great 6 months. I don't know where the time has gone. In some ways, I feel like I just arrived yesterday, and from another perspective, I feel like I've been here for quite some time. I feel like I've settled in nicely, gotten to know a lot of folks, feel comfortable, feel good.
So was it hard to settle in when you first got here?
Not really. I think I had been a president at another institution. The one luxury I had at my previous institution was that I was appointed in February and didn't start until July, which is the norm for college and university presidents. So the fact that President Papazian secured a position at San Jose, left as early as she did, and then the system, President Ajakian, decided not to put in an interim, decided to move forward with a search very quickly, is actually highly unusual. So I think I applied in May, interviewed in June. By the end of June, I had been offered the position, formally appointed in July, and 6 weeks later, I was here. So as opposed to a 6-month transition, I had a 6-week transition. So I didn't really have time to think about it. I just had to find a place to live, get settled, and get to work.
You're enjoying your time here?
I am.
In Connecticut?
I am. I am. Connecticut's, I purchased a home in Morris Cove with my partner of 24 years, Dr. Bill Leopold. He actually is the Chief Enrollment Officer for Rutgers Newark. We have been in higher education and administration our entire career, and so it's been good. It's a nice state, a nice town. I think I've now lived in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, and now Connecticut. So I'm hoping to plant some roots and stay for a while. At least that's the goal. But we've enjoyed it so far. It's also been important to me because this was a personal decision and a professional decision. I had served as president for 4 years at Linden. Linden stayed in the far northeast corner of Vermont. It was a great experience. I loved it. But I was 400 miles, in an 8-hour drive from my partner. And so talk about a commuter relationship. And I think when this opportunity presented itself to be 2 hours door to door from now our home in Connecticut to our home in New Jersey has actually been terrific.
Glad you're doing that.
Thanks.
So, tuition has increased 25% since 2010, and 136% since 2002. It's scheduled to go up 5% more since your meeting or conference yesterday. So, and the amount of financial aid given through state funds will be reduced. So, what's the reasoning? And is it a budget issue? Is it a federal subsidy issue? What's the deal with that?
Well, let's look at the history. You're right. Tuition has increased quite a bit at virtually every institution across the nation, and in particular for public institutions. There was a time, I'm dating myself, when I was a student, where public higher education was almost 100% funded by the state. That has slowly been chipped away, and at this institution, about 40% of our budget comes from the state of Connecticut. So that other 60% has to come from tuition or other forms of revenue generation. Now, remember, in addition to that, every year the costs of running the institution increases, just in personnel alone. Cost of living salary adjustments, etc. So when all of those things add up, you find your 3, 4, 5% is where most of those dollars wind up going. I expect that we will see another 4 to 5% decrease in our state appropriation going into next year. I expect that we will see an increase in tuition. Now, right now, we'll know for certain by Friday. I think it's probably going to fall somewhere between 4 and 5%. I don't think it will be more than that. It could be less than that, but my bet is somewhere between 4 and 5%. So yeah, essentially it's the cost of running an institution. Now the bulk of our costs are actually personnel. 80% of any organization's budget is almost exclusively faculty, staff, etc. The other piece that I think is important for you to know, Quinn, is that if you look at the numbers, in the past decade at this institution, enrollment has declined by 2,000 students. We're now at roughly 10,000 students. So that's a big chunk of student population, but the number of faculty, full-time faculty, has remained the same. And as it should. I have no qualms with that. I think that our job is the academic enterprise and to ensure that students graduate with a quality degree. But as the revenue has less students, less revenue, and yet your costs don't necessarily decline. So that's part of the explanation. Having said that, any institution can't continue to balance its budget on the backs of students, especially given the fact that our student population has diversified, and we are actually seeing a larger number of students who are coming to us who require more financial aid, not less. The state did cut our financial aid budget. So what's Joe's job? Besides asking for money from Hartford, I'm only going to get so much money. And I actually don't have the authority to set tuition. That's done by the board. So my job is to secure partnerships, secure additional dollars outside of tuition and the state appropriation, and quite frankly, to look for new forms of revenue. And we'll do that because we have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with the rise in college expenses, how do you and the university plan to keep students wanting to attend instead of finding a cheaper alternative?
Well, I think first and foremost, quality matters. The experience matters. I think that no matter who you are, you're willing to pay, as long as it's reasonable, a little bit more for better quality or for a positive experience, or for an opportunity that you know is going to provide you with greater opportunity long term. When you look at the state of Connecticut, the truth of the matter is that our state institutions are still the best deal in town. That if I were to look at tuition and fees at roughly 10 grand a year, and if I built my schedule in a way that allows me to finish in a 4 or even 5-year time frame, I'm getting some form of financial aid or working. You're looking at roughly a $40,000 to $50,000 investment. Okay, over the course of one's lifetime, you're going to more than make up for that. But I'd also say that how much does it cost for an individual to buy a car? Okay, so I ask folks to think about their education as an investment, because it's a long-term investment, and your degree is going to last you more than the $30,000 or $40,000 car you're going to buy. At least I would like to hope, and it'll make you money, as opposed to depreciate over time. So I think that's the first part of the answer. The second part is, if you haven't figured this out yet, I'm trying to raise the profile of the university. I've been out and about. We have been We have a pretty aggressive marketing and public relations campaign. I expect that that's going to continue to be the case. There are going to be some program areas we're going to grow. I feel pretty good about that. And so we need to get the word out. I've been a little surprised, having come here, that I initially heard from folks in New Haven, that I would share information about the university, and they'd be like, "Oh, wow, really? I didn't know. So do you know we train the most teachers in the state of Connecticut? All of our teachers have won all of the major awards. By the way, 60% of all the nurses at Yale New Haven, guess where they got their training? Here." At Southern, and I could check off a number of boxes, and people are always pleasantly surprised by that. And then I say, "Well, when's the last time you swung by the university?" I can't recall. "Where do you live?" "Down the street." I'm like, "We have some work to do. I need you here. I need you to see the university, and I need to get the word out about what we have here."
All right. So you're cutting the chief of staff job. And
Yep.
there's a hiring freeze. So do you
Yep.
fear that any of this could create a rift between your office and the staff? And how would it affect the relationship between the Board of Regents and the Southern staff?
In terms of the chief of staff position,
Well, I think he's saying as far as just as far as turnovers, nobody getting raises this year.
yeah,
You know,
I appreciate that.
The professor, the staff office relationship between you and the office, because it says right here, you expect a lot of preliminary cuts, and as far as the deficit is concerned, but you're
Yep.
still trying to find $1.2 million to.
Sure.
So, that's kind of a two.
Well, let's talk about the chief of staff position first. I think every president is different in that regard. I walked into this job with the vacancy already there. Given my style and personality, I didn't feel as though I needed a chief of staff. I think this office is staffed up pretty nicely. I replaced the chief of staff with an entry-level position. Young man who helps to plan events, works with Charmaine, and I think that's worked out nicely. I'm pretty much out and about, so I don't feel a need to have someone represent me. I can represent myself. So I'm not afraid to walk the halls. I'm not afraid to spend time with students. I'm not afraid to, and I think it's been interesting because I have visited every single academic department at this institution. My goal was to do that by the end of the first semester. I almost did it. I was shy by 2 departments. But that was important because there were departments with faculty who had been here for decades who had said, the president has never been in this space. So I didn't have people come to me, I went to them. And so I think there's a value in that. There's value in my taking the time to be out, about, and listening. There's value to creating a comfortable space like this and having an open door policy where people feel that they can come in and engage in conversation. So I think that helps morale. So from a morale standpoint, and a connection university-wide, I think I've been pretty transparent and pretty visible and accessible. And I'll continue to do that. Now, in fairness to my predecessors, I come with a different background. I'm a social worker by training, and in this job, sometimes my social work skills come in handy. And secondly, I'm a student affairs professional by training. So my career started as a hall director. So I have I'm very comfortable interacting with students and finding out what's going on. I'm not shy in that regard. It is true that there are going to be some significant cuts, but they're cuts that already exist. In other words, we've opted not to fill positions as opposed to layoffs, if you will. So that certainly helps in terms of people feeling as though their employment is secure. With relation to salaries, I actually have very little control over that. that is entirely controlled by contract negotiations, which are done at the system or the state. Those contract negotiations have been going on for years. What will happen is once those contracts are resolved, people will get back pay. They'll get retro, and then they'll be their increases will be built into the life of their contract. Does that cause morale problems? It certainly can. I think it's important for me to just acknowledge the fact that I know this is happening, that I'm appreciative of the work that people are doing, and while I may not be able to influence that, there are things that I can do in terms of recognitions and gratitude here on campus. And so I think for me it's about taking control of those things I have control over. As it relates to the board and the community, people care about Southern. And I think that I'm asking people, look, there's only so much we can do in Hartford. There's only so much you can do at the Board of Regents. There's only so much you can do with all of these external entities. That's my job. You know, let me navigate those relationships. In the meantime, fight for your institution as a community, and let's control what we can control. I think there's value in that.
Okay. Do you have anything more to say about the budget?
Not about the budget, but I do want to move on to campus culture.
Sure.
We saw the protests outside of Bewley Library over the travel ban.
Mm-hmm.
Travel ban.
Yep.
Run by the Socialist Club. At that point, what do you see as far as a policy, say, if ICE were to come on campus
Yep.
and look for people? What's the policy, and where do you stand on the immigration, the way it's been done so
Yeah.
far?
Well, the system, the Connecticut State College and University system, have a policy. In fact, it was just rolled out a couple of weeks ago by President Ajakian, and so I would encourage folks to take a look at that policy because I think it's pretty clear. But our first policy is that we're going to take care of our students. We're going to support our students. We're going to provide them with the help of the support they need. There are strict FERPA guidelines that are in place whether a student is documented or not. That's irrelevant. So we don't provide information on students, okay, without their permission. And so if, for example, someone were to come here and ACE authorities, for example, our first order of business would be to refer them to our attorney at the system office, and let that legal process play out in however it is supposed to, and we would take our direction from the system office. In the meantime, I think what we would do is, again, if a student asked us for help and support, anything that is legal, we would do. Providing students with counsel, providing students with support, providing students with direction on their legal options, helping them to secure the appropriate legal representation, etc. But beyond that, we're not going to be turning students over to anybody. Let me be clear. We're not going to be saying, yes, let me take you to X residence hall room. I mean, that's not happening. As I understand at the moment, what appears to be the direction of the new administration in Washington, there appears to be support for the DREAM Act and for Dreamers. I think that's good news. We have not seen any action in the CSCU system and here on campus related to government intervention with regard to immigration and students who are undocumented. At the moment, we would only have we don't know. We don't ask students what their status is. So there is no record, there's no list. I think that's the other thing that students need to know. Some students have self-identified through through DACA, but we as an institution don't have a list.
One of the other questions was about social justice.
Yep.
You said that you wanted to make this campus the biggest social justice campus
Mm-hmm.
in the state.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, there have been issues on campuses regarding to these safe space type of things where, you know, there may be a diversity of people, but not necessarily around the country a diversity of opinion. As far as
Mm-hmm.
you've seen the riots at UC Berkeley as,
Mm-hmm.
as an example, conservative speakers being banned from the
Yeah.
campuses, stuff like that. Where do you draw the line between social justice and safe space culture and freedom of speech and freedom of expression? Expression of opinion.
This is not complicated for me. Okay, first, the safety and security of all of our students takes precedent and the members of our community, period. I have the responsibility for the line between students and the people that work here. I take very seriously the responsibility I have to the lives and the livelihood of nearly 14,000 people. I don't put my head on a pillow at night without thinking about that responsibility and taking it very seriously. So when the police chief says to me, and I trust our police department. I trust Chief Dooley. I think our police department is quite good, very student centered. I think we have a strong student affairs team. And so, you know, if those folks were to say to me, there is a potential for an unsafe environment, we would step in. We would engage that conversation. My hope is that we would always be proactive about that. So let me say that first. Secondly, I'm going to talk about the free speech issue. Free speech is free speech. Period. And this is controversial for some folks. Some folks will not agree with me here. But the truth is, we are very fortunate in this country. There are individuals who have sacrificed their lives for our ability to have the freedoms that we have. And I don't believe that they are freedoms that should be taken for granted. I think they should be honored. We have the freedom to speak our mind as long as it does not jeopardize someone's safety. We have the freedom to have opposing points of view. You have the freedom to say whatever you want for the most part, and I have the freedom to completely disagree with you. And where better for that to happen than on a college campus, where we can engage in the conversation, engage in dialogue and discussion and debate. It was very important to me when, after the election was over, I got a lot of calls about students being distraught, et cetera, et cetera. And it was interesting because the first reaction from some was, are you going to make a public statement? And my response to that was, if the election results had turned out differently, would I be making a public statement? And I said, I think the public statement I want to make needs to be about what I've been saying, that everyone in this community should be treated with dignity, respect, kindness, compassion, and civility, regardless of your point of view. And I want to make sure that every student, whether that student was wearing a Trump t-shirt or a Hillary pin, or another candidate for that matter, that everyone should feel comfortable and safe and part of this community, period. I agree with my colleague president at Middlebury in terms of her allowing a perceived controversial speaker to come to the institution and to allow that program to be held. I think that you combat, my opinion, I think that you combat hateful speech with more speech, with speech based in fact, with civil speech, and constructive debate. While I have my personal views on some of these issues, shutting down the conversation, even if it is well-intentioned in doing so, I don't know how effective that is.
So just for the record, if a guy like Milo Yiannopoulos or a guy like Ben Shapiro was invited by the college Republicans or some other conservative to come to campus, you would not have any opposition to them coming. Just for the.
I think there would be opposition here on campus.
Oh yes, absolutely.
But my position would be, as the president of the university, that I think if a student group has followed the process, wishes to have a speaker, it would be no different than inviting any other speaker, and that I would encourage our community to also invite an alternative speaker if they so choose, and to allow folks to engage in dialogue. I think it would, the professor at Middlebury, for example, said, I actually had some very challenging questions that I was going to ask this speaker. It may not have changed people's point of view, but you don't know that. I think it's about the responsibility of the university is to engage in constructive debate, constructive dialogue, provide constructive points of view, to agree to disagree, to be passionate, and to both passionately state your points of view. And then once those are stated, to be able to take a deep breath and then walk back into your community and decide how you are going to make effective change. That's my point of view. Not everyone would agree with me, but again, if you can have the conversations at the university, where are you supposed to have them?
I think we have time for like
one or two more questions. All right, so I guess we could. So, talking about the smoke-free campus, the university pushed so hard for this policy that apparently cannot be enforced.
Yep.
So, I feel personally there are a multitude of ways to enforce it, but what does the university plan on doing about this policy, and is there any way to stop smoking on campus?
It's hard for me not to smile because I support a tobacco-free campus, but I am not prepared to invest resources for there to be a smoke police. I think that folks need to be educated, and I think that folks, I would like people to self-police, or I would ask members of our community to help participate and police the environment. So I'll give you an example. If I'm walking around campus, out in Engelman, past the picnic table areas by the what is it called? The bagel.
Yeah, like the
Bagel wagon.
Bagel wagon. Yeah.
Doesn't look like a wagon, but that's okay. So the bagel wagon, in that far corner, there are always puffs of smoke, and I'll walk over there and I'll be like, people will put it out. They'll be respectful. I'm like, look, just 1 block, right over there. Please be respectful of the policy. And I'm asking people to continue to do that. I think for the most part, as I look around and walk around campus, I don't hear a lot about the issue, but I do, and I don't see a lot of pockets where the smoke is billowing, if you will. But I don't know if I have much to say beyond that.
Well, then I just
Please.
Why have all the advertising?
Yeah.
It's not going to be enforced. It's not going to have funds appropriated for it. Why?
Well, actually, there are funds that are appropriate.
There are funds, but
We've had a grant, and I guess the question is, what should the enforcement be? One, should there be enforcement, and what should that be? Okay, and I'm not. It's not that I'm taking it lightly. I'm not, but at the same time, I think it's what I would call a social contract. It's making a commitment that we're asking. We are saying we're a smoke-free campus, we're a tobacco-free campus. We're asking people not to do it. It is part of an honor code, if you will, or an honor system. Do we confront it when it's appropriate? Sure. If people are caught multiple times violating the policy, is there a potential for some type of action? Sure. Do I want folks to be primarily focused on that practice in comparison to other things around the campus? The truth is no. So I guess I just don't believe in the smoke police. I don't know how else to say it.
just out of curiosity, do you smoke at all?
I do not.
Approximately how much money was spent on this smoke-free campus policy?
Of the university's money, I believe it was nothing. It was entirely grant funded. And you'd have to speak to Dr. Tyree about that. I'm almost certain that we received some multiple grants to to push the smoke-free environment. I don't know if they were. I think they were federal grants, and so those are the dollars that were used to kind of push it out.
Do you think it was a waste of money?
No, absolutely not. I think it's an important statement to make. Two, I think that you continue to push out the information and continue to remind people. And so I think folks are then cognizant of it and are more intentional in their behavior. I think when you say nothing and when you do nothing, then folks don't think about it at all. But I think when you're willing to do and say something, a person might go to reach for their vape or to reach for a cigarette, and they might pause. Again, I don't want us to overgeneralize. I think we're talking about a small group of students that are in the same corner all the time, or that find various pockets. But for the most part, I'm not walking through a lot of smoke on this campus, and I've been told that if I had been here 5 years ago, and I was standing and I walked outside of Engelman, I would have bumped into a lot of cigarette butts and puffs of smoke. So even though it's still happening, but it may be in a more discreet location, at least folks are trying to be respectful. And I think that's a good start.
last question here. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is coming to Kingston.
He is.
Coming to talk.
Yes.
And do an inspirational speech. What does
Yep.
it mean for the university to have such a prestigious member of our country, and you know, a guy who is also a social justice kind of guy as
Yep.
well? And you know, what does that mean for the university?
Well, you know, you had asked me the question earlier about social justice, you know, you know, as I shared before, you know, social justice is about equity. It's about providing level playing fields. I often use the shoe analogy. Everybody needs a pair of shoes. Okay, so I'm going to give. Everyone's going to be equal. I'm going to give everybody a pair of shoes. You're going to get a size 3 women's stiletto. You're going to get a boy's size 3 sneaker. And Charmaine out there, my assistant, is going to get a men's 11 Timberlake copper toe boot. Everybody's got a pair of shoes. Yay, we celebrate diversity. Everybody's equal now. Yay. The concept of social justice is the belief that we're going to give you what you need to be successful depending on where you are in your station of life. So, what size shoe do you wear?
Size 3 stiletto, I guess.
Well, whatever size shoe you wear in real life, okay, is the shoe that we would provide you, okay? And so this concept of what's important to me as it relates to social justice is to let folks know that, look, we want to provide everyone with opportunity, but understand that different people are coming from different places and different life experiences, and we need to be cognizant of that, and we need to respect that. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, there are multiple facets to this. Yes, he's a big name. Yes, I drove by a billboard yesterday and saw his picture in Southern Connecticut State University, so that's great in terms of raising the profile of the institution and our brand. And, you know, he is a man that also represents the changing face of the New Haven community. There's a reality for this institution and for New Haven that the demographics are shifting, and both the Latino and the African American population is growing in this city, and as a result, I think that Southern's demographics will continue to change as well. I hope that, you know, I'm telling people there are great things happening here. This is a terrific place. I hope that Kareem's arrival helps us to showcase that, allows folks to know that, you know, we're a pretty special place. And more importantly, I hope it gets people to come out to visit to see who we are and learn more about us. So I'm looking forward to his message. I think it's I think he's a big get for us for the lecture series. I'm not looking forward to standing next to him, so to speak, at least physically, but I am looking forward to meeting him.